Hi, this is Sarah from sarayip.com and Facebook The Numbers Queen. I'm very lucky to be talking today to the amazing Yarraka Bayles. Hi, Yarraka.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me on.
So, I've got goosebumps already. That's the quickest it's ever happened. So, Yarraka, how do you like to introduce yourself? How do you like to introduce yourself? And maybe what you do?
Well, first and foremost, we acknowledge country. So I'm on Yarraka country today. I'm a Wannerua and Bundjalung woman on my mum's side and a Birragubba Gungaloo woman on my father's side. So it's always important as First Nations people to acknowledge our lineage, where our parents are from, and our connection to country.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that. So it's an interesting interview today. So based on the date of birth you've given me privately, we know you're a 28/10/1 pioneer life path, like actually many activists. And so you're here to heal people at that base chakra level, their connection with their bodies and their earth and their ancestry and family trees. And you may know that a lot of ones feel like they're kind of ahead of their time. Sometimes they have to do things that are not very popular, but later on people usually 10 years later, people are like, that's a great idea.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. That makes a lot of sense, actually. Wow.
And there's that sometimes frustration of why don't people get it. So, as you're clearly someone who believes in what you do, and at the same time, you don't always fit in with what people expect. So, like, what's your advice for people who just feel like society doesn't quite get them, or they're just a little bit out of rhythm with everyone else's frenetic pace? What's your advice for those people who just feel like they're a little bit different?
Personal experience, I'd say find your tribe, but when you're on the right path, they come to you, like everything is aligning, like this very moment. So I think it can tend to be very lonely because you feel like an outcast, like you just don't fit in. And I've always felt different and not sure why. I just have grown up. I don't come from a regular family. We've had very different upbringings to a lot of other people, especially a lot of Indigenous people. Mm-hmm. So for me to be able to connect with anyone on the same page has been really difficult. Mm. So I guess it's about, for me, just taking that time and understanding it's okay to stay single and find myself, and people on the same path just tend to come together and align. So I'm finding that now, only at 38 years old, that I'm actually content with being alone and enjoying my own company, and it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, well, you're doing a lot of integrating, it feels like, this lifetime. And it's interesting, if you look at alone, it's this compaction of all one. And maybe sometimes we need physical distance, almost like what we've got right now, to create inner intimacy and inner marriage or commitment to why we chose this body, why we decided to come here.
Definitely. And I think this is a perfect time now, in light of what's going on around the world. If you can't go out and do what you normally do, then it's forcing us to go inside and do the inner work. So the last couple of months for me have been so profound, and I feel like I'm very new on my journey, or this journey that I've sort of been flung into. I've always known that I would be walking the path of my parents, my grandparents, and my honourable ancestors, but just not this early. I thought I needed to be an elder, and that knowledge and wisdom would come to me. But I'm learning very different now, and it's the knowledge, the ancestral knowledge that we're tapping into, that doesn't have an age limit. It's open to anyone who chooses to tap into it, and that's exactly what our elders tell us. You can have, that saying, an old head on young shoulders, or something like that. So yeah, you've got very wise young people walking the earth these days, and it's very empowering to see and meet a lot of those people.
You're just cutting out, Yarraka. Can you still hear me?
Internet. Yeah, I can see and hear you, but I know it's not good reception here.
That's okay. We'll just put it down to spirit.
Yeah.
Look, I think it's really true. We've kind of inverted the education system, and I think we're all literally turning towards our children now, and they're like little professors. And it feels like as this new world develops, this age of Aquarius comes in, they actually are the ones who will be lecturing us perhaps, or creating material that we need to absorb, which is quite different to the last century, which had a lot of one numerology, which was a lot about doing and creating. This too is a lot more around receiving and tuning in.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I think in the 9 years that I've been a mother to Quaden, I've learned so much more in my all of my years of life, but in the last 9 years, my experience with raising a child so out of this world, like literally he's just not like any other 9-year-old, and I've learned so much from him that it's just been amazing. I never would have thought that that anyone could learn so much from, you know, from such a small child. And I'm understanding why now. I'm understanding his path and his journey and his testimony. And I've always known, I've always felt, and my whole family, you know, he's always been destined for greatness. We knew, and with that comes a lot of adversity. So I think it's all part of the parcel, really. It's preparing us for what's yet to come. So a lot of the, you know, the pain and the anguish and the struggles that we're experiencing now is definitely preparing us for what's to come.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, in numerology, pain and gain have the same vibration. It's all about your angles, and it's all about whether you're looking at the short-term or long-term results, isn't it?
Yes, definitely.
And it's interesting that you say 9 years, because in numerology, everything happens in 9-year cycle. And 9 years ago was the opening of the 1111 portal in 2011. And then this is the next stage where people have gone through a very strong awakening. A lot of people have flipped careers and gone into alternative medicine and thinking that the two energy, the 2020, is about actually really applying it in the world and showing people how it creates connections, and it creates a lot of forgiveness. It's actually showing your work. And I wonder, because we know that you're a 28-10-1 and they have a lot of turning points around their late 20s. So not to be rude, but do you remember what happened around that 28 mark or your late 20s?
Yeah, I felt pregnant with Quaden.
Yeah. That is pretty cool.
Yeah, so that was a huge turning point, because it was 11 years after I was a 17-year-old single mother of twins, and I honestly thought I couldn't have any more kids. There was a lot of issues. My health was struggling. And by the time I had Quaden, I was clean and sober and fit and healthy for 4 years. So at age 25, I'd already had this huge realization of, you know, like drugs and alcohol is no longer serving a purpose in my life. I self-medicated. It was a coping mechanism for me after losing so many people that had passed in my family. And I turned to what I knew, you know, it was drugs and alcohol to numb the pain, just as a lot of other people have self-medicated with drugs and alcohol. Now I choose food. That's my drug of choice. But that late 20s was life-changing for me. So, yeah, that's really was a powerful time for me. And not even knowing, you know, what was to come. I had no idea that I would have a child with achondroplasia. But before that, I'd always had a heart, like I'd worked at special schools and always have just been so drawn to people, whether it was in public and we'd seen, you know, people with different types of abilities or disabilities. I've always been drawn to them. And then I fell pregnant with Quaden at 28, gave birth when I was 29, and life's never been the same since.
Yeah, pre-Quaden and post-Quaden.
Yes.
It's like
major changes.
ADDC. Well, and I really appreciate you sharing that. It's interesting because your life purpose is a lot about healing your initial landing on Earth. You know, the number one is often the first year of life. So, you know, sometimes by having children, we are working through a lot of our initial experiences with humans. And it sounds like there was this sort of really amazing, like, what do they call it? I think there's a Nordic country where they call that kind of child an evening star, the last star that comes up, the child you're not expecting, the child you have, you know, when you've had a bit of evening star. I think it's not the morning star. I think it's that evening star. There's a beautiful word for it. I have to find it. And the one that gives hope. They give you that hope, you know, that you've still got something to give, and they sort of bring everything together, you know.
That's powerful. You just made me think of my granddaughter was born last year, and the name that came to me was Yarraka, which means morning star in our language. And I wanted to call her that, but her mum chose Yarraka Bayles, which is lovely. It means little woman, and she's such a little woman. But Yarraka really resonated with me, and it means morning star. So that may be a name to come in the future, I think. There's going to be another special little girl on the way. But anyway.
Yeah, well, I think there are some baby spirits flying around because I've had a lot around me since getting ready for your reading. There's a lot of spirits, I have to say. A lot of, they're friendly. They're certainly inquisitive, but they're certainly also friendly. And we talked about your shirt before the call, how you've got, well, firstly, we should talk about the shirt, right? So you want to tell us about the shirt?
Yeah, so credit to my sister Caillou. After the video went viral and we had lots of people wanting to show support and asking how we can support, and my sister's already got a clothing business up and running. Yeah. So she said, let's just bring out a shirt and people can be ambassadors. It's a reminder to be kinder. Brought to you by Quaden's Worldwide Tribe. And on the back, it's a glow-in-the-dark thing. You probably can't see it properly, but it says, what kind of ancestor will you be? And my grandmother's legacy was called Honourable Ancestors. And she had an amazing quote. And she always used to say, through your actions today, will you be an honourable ancestor to the children of the future? Mm. So, you know, that's like my mantra. I'm always reminded of the legacy that I'm leaving for my children, for your children, for future generations. So I think if we constantly remind ourselves, for me, it's to be kinder to myself. So when I put on this shirt, and this is our work shirt, Quaden wears his work shirt, we deliver food to people and serve people. You know, it's about serving. But when I wear this shirt, it reminds me, first and foremost, I need to be kinder to myself because I often leave myself last and neglecting myself. You know, self-sabotaging has been such a thing for me. I don't know why. I'm still trying to figure out, why do I do this to myself? Why am I trying to do? There's so much to do and not enough time to do everything that I want to do. So I think it's just telling myself, just be kind to yourself and be kind, especially to unkind people, because they're the ones that need it the most, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting as you're talking and the tree is shaking behind you, kind of like
lots of it. I'm feeling it, the goosebumps.
Yeah, there's a lot that's happened, I'll be honest, when I was tuning into, I was going to say reading, it's an interview, isn't it? It's kind of an interview reading. You know, the first one is that kinder is actually a word that means children. Like kindergarten.
Yep.
Garden of children. And so that reminded to be childlike and innocent, because children are inherently very kind. If we allow them the freedom and spaces to be so, you know, if we don't inculcate them into that competitiveness and beating each other. So that interesting reminder to be kinder, reminder to be childlike. It's cute, isn't it? Anyway, that's
I love that.
The other thing is that this idea that your grandmother's got your back. I really like that too.
Yeah, I'm feeling that. I'm feeling that very strong.
Cool. That was cool. And when you were talking about the shirt before we got on the call, you talked about how you're doing a lot. You benefited a lot from your grandmother's foundation. You used that word foundation, and it's interesting because it's that, literally that idea of just, you know, one more step on that journey, and it's taking sometimes a whole lifetime to complete a step, but it's a step that many people are then going to be able to take. Creating these pathways, but creating them so that everybody can access them and not just people with like really long legs or something.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's very important to make it all accessible, because we as Indigenous people know what it feels like to be, I guess there's so much exclusivity in the world. So we want something that's going to benefit everyone, you know, to let them know that you're welcome. It's not just an Indigenous foundation. It's not just for people of colour or Aboriginal people. We want people to feel a part of it, because I think what's coming up for me a lot now is the disconnection. So many people are feeling disconnected. So I think it's really important that we remind people, you know, that there are safe spaces and you can come and feel welcomed. It's not exclusive for certain people. I think people are really longing for connection. And I think with disconnection, that's where so much is happening. You know, so many issues come up when we're disconnected.
That's the word I use a lot, because I do a lot of work with people who feel they've been persecuted in past or present lives through bullying, or because they were witches or healers or whatever, or their race, you know, and that idea of being connected, but you spell it CONNECKTED, connected.
Oh,
A lot of people with, and I know because I watched that video on Quaden, there's, you know, a lot of people coming in with this, the neck outer joint, and they have trouble accessing their head and heart at the same time. And it creates this kind of inner conflict where your logic and intuition are almost speaking different languages, because there's actually a lot of psychic pressure around us not to communicate with ourselves and actually to be out of touch with ourselves, so that we therefore are more open perhaps to other people's ideas.
Yeah.
So it's hard to control someone who is fit and healthy. I actually have a saying, healthy people are naturally psychic. They have a strong intuition, strong inner teacher, strong inner parent. They know what's good for them. They say no very easily. They don't sell themselves outright. Healthy people are psychic. So there's this sort of vested interest in people not being healthy, whether it's mentally healthy or spiritual health.
Definitely.
You do a lot of work in that area. You know, you've just disappeared. Oh no, Yarraka's gone off the record for now. Hopefully she'll tune in again. Maybe this will have to be a to be continued episode. We'll just give her a minute and see if she comes back. I'll just give her a call on my phone. Let's see what's happened there. Oh, the fun that Spirit has with us. Hey, did something happen to your phone? Oh. Well, you've never done an interview with me before. I'll just let you know I've still got the interview rolling. Okay, well, I would suggest I'm just going to pause the recording. Hey, everyone, thanks for your patience. Let me just try to get Yarraka back on the line. All right. Hi, this is Sarah with Yarraka again. We're now a two-part interview today. If at first you don't succeed, try and try again. That's definitely the one life path in a nutshell, one step at a time.
Lots of crazy energy I'm feeling here. Like just...
Well, you know, it has to be said. You know, the one life path, there can actually be a really deep fear of actually being, how shall we say it, being on Earth, like actually fully being on Earth in the present, and just really just embodying your purpose. And sometimes, and just a suggestion, sometimes that fear will come up in readings and things I do, and it will short the call, the lights will go out, all kinds of stuff will happen. And
wow.
I've learned over time not to give up. I've learned over time not to let it stop the interaction, but just to go, hey, that happens. Yeah, and let's just remember that we're more powerful than our fears or our anxieties, whether it's yours, it's mine, it's the collective. Maybe everyone was holding their breath and Spirit was like, hey, you guys need to all chill. And then cut the, and or maybe someone's listening to the call, which is kind of creepy.
Yeah, I'm definitely picking up on a lot of that. So it feels much better now. I'm more calmer, and I'm not getting a signal on my phone like it was. So yeah, something was coming up and it was thinking, you know, like when you're downloading something, that was taking up my screen. And that's
I think personally you were downloading something, as you know. Firstly, I just want to acknowledge the fact that you don't do many interviews, so I was very touched by the fact that you've actually said yes. And you know, there's a reason we don't do things, and so all I'm suggesting is perhaps there is a little bit of a clearing going on the call.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's go back. So at 28 you had Quaden, and that was just like a massive, complete new civilization developed.
Yes.
Quaden came to Earth and changed Earth. So we know that Quaden, from his date of birth, which is public, which, you know, has been made public, to be honest, he's actually a pure 10. And what that means is where you find your purpose at 28 with minor turning points at 10 and 1, he actually really is in his full glory, you could say, at 10. And I have been working with a lot of families recently where their children are finding their purpose at 8, 9, 10. The biggest challenge I'm finding is that they do not believe the child could do that. They're like, that's not happening. You need to, you know what I mean? They'll be like, oh, have a think about it. You know, I didn't find, you know, myself till my 30s, and just slow down, pat on the head kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a danger, because then you've got people with like, little people combusting, going, I know, like the longer you make me wait, the less confidence I have, and the more I'm sort of missing my own boat.
Exactly. That so resonates with Aboriginal child rearing practices, which is very different and very conflicting with a lot of Western child rearing practices, because what we teach our children in traditional Aboriginal societies, it's all about building their inner strength and confidence. So in our language, there's no question, there's no word, no Aboriginal words in languages for why. So we don't encourage our children to ask why questions. And what that does is it develops very keen observational skills. The children are encouraged to find out the answer themselves. Whereas today it's information by inquiry, information overload, everything, all the answers are there. We just have to Google. But in our workshops at the BlackCard, we talk about Aboriginal child rearing practices, and we mention an ad. Do you remember this old Telstra ad where the young boy asks his dad, why did they build the Great Wall of China? And the dad said to keep the rabbits out. Apparently dad didn't have internet at the time, so he couldn't Google it. And a lot of us are guilty by telling our children the wrong answer, anything to, quieten them down. And the dad said to keep the rabbits out, and the poor boy got the wrong answer. And if that was in traditional Aboriginal society, say if Quaden would have come to me and said, Mum, why did they build the Great Wall of China? I would have said, that's a great question, son. Why do you think? So we then encourage them to find the answer themselves, and they come back and they tell us the correct answer, and that encourages them, that strengthens their spirit and their confidence. Whereas today it's very difficult because people don't understand the strength of a child. They're not just, they're little humans. They're, future elders and ancestors. They're little children in training, So I think it's really important to harness that. Children are not just, babies. They're little human spirits that have a purpose.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because obviously parenting is sort of swinging back to that free range attitude. And I think there are some aspects of Eastern culture that are actually correlating with what you're saying.
Definitely.
That prioritization of critical thought is very heavy, especially in the way I was raised. And, I can't say that for everyone, but to think for yourself is considered the highest gift. And it's interesting, I had my son's teacher over, his kindy teacher, and I was like going all out. My husband's like, what the heck? I'm like, in Asia, your child's teacher is like this here. They're like fully influencing your child. And I was like, wow, actually maybe not everyone thinks like that.
Yeah.
But to actually this it's an amazing respect we have for anyone who is willing to take that big role of influencing our little people. So if it's okay, I'm just going to go back. So we know that Quaden is a pure 10. And what that means is probably at the age of 10, he will do something that changes the course of his history. And it's interesting just because he's kind of coming up to that, isn't he?
Yes, in December he'll be 10, so he's 9.5 at the moment.
It's coming, the countdown has begun. So just out of interest, do you have like some hopes for him, or, oh, look at that, it's 11:11.
Oh, there you go. Perfect timing.
That's a big call, everyone. So just out of interest, you don't have to give it all away, obviously. But do you have some hopes for Quaden in this next, time? Because he's kind of come through a bit of trauma recently, you could say.
Yeah, but out of that is like a rebirth. I think it's not, our pain is not in vain, and I think a lot. What's happening now, like we had a lot of speaking engagements, a lot of conferences we were attending, a lot of workshops we were doing, a lot of ambassador programs. That's all been on hold, but it's been so good because it's given us time to actually feel, given us time to think, who we want to align with, what we do and don't want to do, or, organizations that have asked us to be ambassadors. And there's been so many different things, but now we've had the chance to think about it and say, yes, thanks, but no thanks. So I think with everything that's happened just in the last few months after the video went viral, it's fast-tracked his journey and his path, because I think for me, it's even made me realize, wow, you're never too young to learn or to teach, to share your story. And he's already been mentoring other children that have experienced violence or intimidation. You know, I'm very cautious not to say bullying, because that's it's shifting that that term onto an innocent child a lot of the times. So I don't like calling children bullies, because a lot of the times it's unintentional and there's pain behind why that children is acting out that way. So I think Quaden is definitely here to teach us many lessons, but just to share his story, because sometimes that's all we've got to connect to other people is our experiences. But I guess long term, I've always seen him as an engineer. Yeah. He's always loved Lego and building, macrame. Even as a child, he loved like the 7 to 14-year-old Lego, not the big Lego blocks, but building. So he's always been very, you know, mechanical minded and analyzes everything, loves maths and science, things that I definitely weren't my strong points in school, but he's definitely, I see him doing something along those lines, as well as, you know, being in that role of mentoring and just sharing his story to help encourage or empower and inspire other people, to let them know it's okay, you know, to speak up, to stand up and speak up. It's not a bad thing. Whereas a lot of times we're frowned upon if we stand up and speak out against very sensitive issues like suicide. You know, I think the only way we're going to be able to help the statistics and improve this issue is if we talk about it, because we feel like we've been suffering in silence for many, many years. 6 years old was his first suicide attempt. And I've only just started talking about it last year when it became more apparent. So I know that he's healing a lot of my journey. My twin daughters as well. We've experienced a lot of suicide in our communities, in our families. We've been to way too many funerals of young people who have taken their lives. So I see him doing that work now. While I don't want to put so much pressure on him, you know, to be that child, you know, I'm letting him find his own feet in his own time. But he knows that he's got a very, you know, a very bright future ahead. He's always had big dreams, he knows what he wants, and he's always loved money. It's something that, you know, people take that the wrong way. But ever since he was a baby, he's loved money. We've had a money box every year. We put money in, and he's singing out to me now. You can come out, darling.
Are you sure? You're okay with him being on camera?
He's fine. Yeah. He's always said he wants to be a banker. He loves counting money. He just loves money. So I've known that he's going to be financially stable.
Yeah.
Cutting out again. But yeah, it's opposite.
All the sensitive things you say seem to cut out, and I wonder if it's a little bit of an energy read. If I could interject and say some stuff which is coming from numerology. So in numerology, money has a 27-9 vibration. It can potentially heal the world. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Money has the same vibration as the word children.
Wow.
And if you really look at it, money is energy, and energy can be used to make life easier for others. And it has the same vibration as a leader, the same vibration as school, the same vibration as a witch. And to be comfortable with money and receiving that global or universal energy can be very progressive for a soul, assuming that, oops, are you still there? We're getting some fun stuff. Hey. That comfort with money can be a doorway into the establishment, and sometimes it's the establishment where you can make a big difference. And I'm thinking of the movie Star Wars. In Star Wars, the way that they blow up the Death Star is that they have someone who's helped to build it, who comes out and he tells them where the little soft spot is, you know, where to blow it up. And when I first started working, I was working in politics. So I mean, even as a teenager, I was serving chocolates to the Prime Minister and stuff, and I never understood why, but I've now had a lot of contact with people in power and studied them, which I write about on my site. And I always thought the reason I started out in government and the UN and all that was because I needed to understand it in order to make a difference. And sometimes you have to study the machine before you can out-create it.
Definitely.
I would wonder actually, because a lot of people who see 1111, I'm guessing, you know, you're in that group of that tribe, you know, they are working on returning the planet to multiple sources of income, multiple love, multiple spirituality, multiple roads to happiness, instead of this single path where you have to look a certain way and be a certain way in order to be accepted.
Yes.
Multidimensional. And I would suggest that Quaden does have a bit of a touch, because we saw what happened when you made that, what was it, a few seconds video, and it brought in some ridiculous amount of money that would have bought a couple of houses.
Yeah. And that was very uncomfortable. It was really uncomfortable for me. That's why I'm like, I don't want nothing to do with it. I'll just donate it all to charity. It was really uncomfortable. I've never, you know, grown up with money at my disposal, regardless of what people think. You know, we grew up in Redfern, very humble beginnings, housing commission. Yeah. I still don't own my own home or drive a flash fancy car. So money to me is something that it's that's comfortable. But I'm learning to respect and appreciate money. I need to learn to be comfortable with it, to be okay with it. Because like you said, the more money that, you know, that comes our way, for me now, I'm seeing that the more resources we can use, the more people we can help. So I'm learning to be okay and comfortable with whatever comes our way.
Yeah, well, it's a great healing as a female from a, you know, maybe a minority representation to access money. It's really not been allowed for many centuries. And if I can share a little story about my son, when we fell pregnant, we were not married, and I had my own business, and I did not have a lot of money. And someone close to me pressured us to have an abortion, even though I'd wanted to have a baby for like 14 years, since I was, no, longer than that. I wanted a baby since I was 6. I'd wanted a baby for 29 years. Finally fell pregnant. There was this massive pressure to have an abortion because we potentially, you know, weren't going to be able to give him a good life. And fortunately, because of my meditation practice, my psychic practice, I tuned into the baby. The baby was talking to me, and he's like, I'm just going to bring it. Don't worry. And all this stuff started happening. People started donating things. I'll just wait till you come back in. People started donating things, and in the end, all we basically had to buy was nappies. And actually, someone offered nappies, but I wanted to have something of my own. And so, literally, Forrest just manifested stuff almost like this, almost like space rubble or something.
Wow!
He literally just came in and said, "I will not lack, and we will go out." And maybe, I don't know, I have enough money for this, but not that. And somehow something will happen and he'll just get it. And then I realized one day that would be why he'd chosen us as parents, because that kind of confidence or ability could go either way.
Definitely.
You know, you could get a little off track at some point, you know, once the ego starts to develop when they get older, which is about that, you know, 9, 10 age, you know, it could go either way, especially, you know, once girls get involved or whatever.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, I see. We're going to be like your field marshals once you start getting a little bit more like out there. And I'm like, oh, we're going to have fun.
That's powerful. What a story. Wow.
Oh, well, yeah, there's one time I really wanted to buy a juice, and I had just enough money for this juice. This was at Charlie's Raw Juices in Brisbane, which you might know. And I walk in with Forrest, and Forrest is like, I want a cupcake. And I'm like, oh, crap. I really want a juice. I've been saving up. I need a juice. And I'm like, oh, pretend I didn't hear him. We turn around and we look at the kids section, and they've set up this massive photo shoot of cupcakes and juices. And I'm like, oh no. And I said to the owner, can you put a curtain or something? Because if my kid sees that, he's going to destroy your photo shoot. I kid you not. You know what they said? They looked at him. He's wearing this little shirt with this cute slogan. They go, your kid is adorable. Can we use him as the model? And we'll give him a drink in the shoot as a payment for our Instagram post. And I went, what? And within like 1 second, Forrest has jumped straight in. He's smashing the cupcakes, got 2 juices in his mouth. And I got a photo, I'll put it in the blog.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's happened so many times. And can I just say, like, when I read about Quaden, I was like, I've seen that kind of person. I've seen that before. And that's just not an issue for them. Like, there's something that they've mastered. You know, like we've all got things we've mastered.
Definitely.
So that's the language they speak, and maybe that's the language he's reintroducing to you. And I have to say, like, my son's really helped me a lot with that side of things. But what you're providing him with is that the people's touch. The people's touch, because I think mechanically, mathematically minded people, they can be a bit up here, you know what I mean? Big head thing.
Yes, definitely.
So yeah, I don't know if that helped, but I just could so relate when I first saw Quaden's video, and I went, my God, this kid, he's on some kind of mission. Just his presence is just enormous. I could feel him from miles away. So if it's okay, I've just got a couple more questions. So your life path is a lot about putting yourself first, which is going to be a heck of a challenge with Quaden's energy next to you. Also learning to put himself first.
Yeah. And my twin daughters and my granddaughter. I don't even have time.
We'll have to do all their numbers, but all I'm saying is that's a fun little challenge for you, is, you know, making sure that you are well and you are putting yourself first with such big personalities around you. So what helps you to stay centered? How do you stay sane, basically?
I just have to constantly tap into the ancestral knowledge, the wisdom, the energy of this space. It's the only thing that I have, like, regardless of, you know, if I'm homeless or if I have no job, regardless of what I don't have, what I do have is always a connection to country. And that's sometimes all I do feel like I have, because everything else is material, you know. And I mean, it's great that I'm blessed that I've, you know, have a roof over my head and I've got a car to drive and we've got food to eat.
Yeah.
But that can all disappear. Like, there's no work at the moment. So it's made me even realize, you know, what do I really have when all of this can be so easily taken away? For me, that's what keeps me centered, you know, my connection to my country, to my culture, my family. They definitely keep me centered, sometimes off centered. And but yeah, I think just to know that we can tap in at anywhere, at any time, and receive, you know, this abundance of energy. And I think that's really important, because in the heat of the moment, or whether we're in conflict or pain or trauma, we often forget that. So I'm just constantly reminding myself now, just tap into it. It's there, you know, there. I feel so much energy around me, yet I think I've blocked it out for so long. I've gone against my intuition because I think I've been conditioned to think, oh, that's bad, you know, that's sorcery, or growing up and attending church for some time where they call it like voodoo or black magic. That's evil, it's demonic. Whereas no, that's comes with hundreds and thousands of years of yeah, there's lots of energy.
It's all right. I think I must share with you, I've been reading a book by Thomas Sheridan this morning, which I never picked up, literally. I've just picked it up, and it is about sorcery, and it's about the difference between, you know, basically traditional medicine and magic and black magic, and, you know, essentially traditional alchemy and they call it sorcery. I've never used the word until today, and you literally mentioned it.
Wow.
It's simply about minding your own business, but growing yourself to your fullest potential, so you're not so affected by outer climate change or outer psychic attack, and just growing yourself. But it also permits you to use your powers to defend yourself if someone is wanting to harm you. And that's where I think sometimes the New Age movement lets people down, is they don't teach people how to defend themselves. So they do just become these ripe mangoes, but they don't put, there's no like safety net. But then, there is black magic, and that's, you could say, sometimes in advertising, sometimes in media, and it's where, they're using all of these principles to cast a spell of hypnosis whereby you think you're incomplete.
Yeah.
And a lot of this ancient or traditional sorcery medicine, it's very much coming from people of the land. Absolutely. People who studied the cycles of nature and what could be more truthful than nature. You know, I love this idea that the word earth is an anagram of heart, and where your heart ends is where the earth begins.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I love that.
I just love it so very much, and it's really helped me to understand the type of work I do, because I believe I was born speaking heart. And then I had to learn to speak head in order to survive to adulthood. But I always spoke my native language of heart, which was really hard to keep at times because no one else was speaking. And almost like losing your language, which is a real thing for Indigenous people too, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Now that my children are born, and I've met my husband, and they all speak heart. And I'm like, yeah, I'm so glad I didn't go.
Wow.
But then, go into the business world, speak head again. So it's like being kind of spiritually bilingual.
Yeah, that really resonates, because we often feel like we're code shifting, and I'm constantly reminding myself, because I'm trying to I overanalyze, and I'm operating from here way too much, and I need for my head to drop down into my heart and speak from heart, where we've been conditioned not to. And it's really difficult, because now I've got to unlearn all of these things that I've learned through my formal education, and it's put a lot of blockages. So now it's just, I'm unlearning so much. I've been conditioned to not think or not feel. So that really, really resonates. Head, heart over head. I've got to drop down from my head into my heart and speak more from that place of love. And that can be very difficult.
Yeah, it's actually not easy to do through spoken word. The best way to come from the heart is actually to sing. To really sing, and to sing improvise things and toning and group harmonies. It's one of the best ways to open that up. What I was also going to say, though, is what you're talking about is that internalization of patriarchy or capitalism, which is literally the head tells the body what to do, the men tell the body what to do. And that's no disrespect to men. It's harmed them as much as it's harmed women.
Of course.
But I often, work with people, and essentially a lot of the work I do is simply to get them talking to each other again, instead of trying to rip each other apart, those different voices. Because the inner critic, the mind, the inner critic, is extremely useful in certain situations. In certain situations, you need to defend yourself, right? You need to explain yourself. But if you use it all the time, it's like being a tennis player who can only play with your right arm. You're always going to be stressed, because if this one breaks or something happens, you've got nothing else to play with. That's developing different sides, which you talked about with developing observation. So is there anything else you'd like to share with people today? Are there some websites you'd like to share? I know you've been talking a little bit about some of the food things you've been doing.
Yeah, I think if anyone's interested in learning more about the true history of this country, there's so much that is untapped. I mean, we live in a capital city, but Brisbane is often seen as the gateway city. People fly here and then they go to the Great Barrier Reef, or, they'll go to rainforest, or, anywhere else. But Brisbane, and I just want people to know there is so much. I give so much respect and gratitude to the Yarraka people and the Turrbal people, the custodians here, where my 3 children were born. It's important for me to make sure they know, the true history of the place. And with that, it gives us a deeper connection and a deeper respect for the place we call home, because a lot of us aren't, living on our tribal lands or our homelands. So I just think there is so much that Brisbane has to offer, and so much that, the culture of this country has to offer, that's been untapped hugely for the last 250 or so years of colonisation. And if people knew, what exists here, what was here before, I think it would help solve so many problems. Just the Indigenous knowledges and wisdom of caring for country, our obligation of caring for country, and, the responsibility we have for future generations. I think there's so much. There's cultural tours. You can do, have a cultural immersion in Brisbane, in a capital city. You don't have to go to the outback or to Uluru to experience an authentic Aboriginal immersion of culture. So I think if people just, look up the BlackCard, if you're interested in learning more about what we do, then there's so many opportunities. And we're learning now to do it all online. So, you can do it in the comfort of your own home. We're learning how to do virtual tours now, so you can learn the history of this place. But the best part for me is obviously the bush tucker grazing table. That's my forte. So just FYI, if anyone's interested, we have the most ancient and nutritious food source in the world right here in our own backyard. The medicinal purposes of these trees right behind me, the lily pilly, very high in vitamin C content. Kakadu plum has the highest vitamin C content in the world. So right now with, flu season, we've got, stuff that is grown here in our own country that has been, tested for hundreds of thousands of years. So I think if people just knew exactly what was here in our own backyards, we'd be so much better off. And I'm only just learning to tap into it more now. I've grown up with a lot of this knowledge, but I haven't really appreciated it until I've really needed it, whether it's been a life or death situation and all I've had to rely on is, you know, our bush medicines. That's helped, you know, heal a lot of the pain that my son goes through with his condition. So, look, there's so much, the list goes on and on and on, but there's so many amazing 100% Aboriginal owned and operated businesses in Brisbane and all around Australia that are doing amazing things that we really need to be throwing our support behind, because 100% of that profit goes back to the families and the communities that are bringing the amazing product to us. So, you know, if I can just encourage people to link up with a lot of those organisations, and the Supply Nation is an amazing database of thousands of 100% Aboriginal owned and operated businesses that cover every aspect of whether it's construction or cleaning or food services, you know, engineering. There's so many amazing Indigenous organisations out there that are really doing amazing things. So I'd really encourage people to get onto Supply Nation, where they can have a look at thousands of businesses that they can support if they're interested in.
Yeah. Can I just commend you? Firstly, thank you for being so extremely generous in this interview. I've actually done quite a lot of interviews, and hang on, having a moment, having a little micro sleep. It's all good. I think we all. I was going to say, I think you're the only person who's actually recommended your whole industry rather than just yourself.
Oh.
And I think that's what I really like about your energy, is that you're really thinking about how can you get a good outcome for the community. And maybe that's where we could have a little bit more balance in things like marketing and, you know, the spiritual industries. Is, you know, it's a field, isn't it? We're all working in a field. I have referred to friends and colleagues and sometimes even competitors in my journey, which might be because I come from an NGO charity background. And I've found that in the short term, it does lose you money, but in the long term, it gains you respect, because people know that you are not just doing it because they're in front of you. You're not just doing it from convenience. You're actually cherry picking where you can make a difference. So I really like that about you, Yarraka.
Oh, thank you. That's the culture we've been, you know, sharing is caring. And that's always been the first thing that we're taught as children, is sharing, whether it's from the cradle and, you know, our babies have a bottle or a rusk or whatever it is, you'll automatically hear us say, oh, can I have some? You know, not that we want it, but what that does is instill that practice of sharing from a baby. And we've grown up with that.
But also the pleasure of receiving and giving. It's interesting, in an Asian banquet. I mean, I'm coming from Hong Kong, Singapore. They may not all be like this, but what you do is you have this like lazy Susan. I think all the kids love the lazy Susan. You spill a lot of stuff, but that's kind of fun. Like, it looks like Pro Heart by the end. And so, you know, you've got those big dishes and everybody serves themselves so that they don't have to eat what's on their plate. You don't make them just kind of like, you don't force feed people, and you don't make them feel bad if they, you know what I mean? Like, they get to choose what they eat. And I really thrive like that. And when I was quite sick with an eating disorder and many other things, someone suggested, it was an Asian personal trainer. She said, just go back to eating what your culture eats.
Yes.
You know, fries and rice and get off all this pasta and stuff. And I'm like, are you kidding? Really? I don't even want to be Chinese. And I was like, let's try it. And my body just loved it. It was like, yes, please, plain rice and boiled soups. And so my husband and kids still laugh at me, and they don't love they don't love that side of the food I cook, but I love it. My inner child.
Well, that's soul food for you. And it reminds me of my dad's legacy. He had this program called Decolonize Your Diet. And I just shared the link on my Facebook. So there's a 10-part docu-series. It is amazing. And it's exactly what you just said, going back to our natural diet. And Aboriginal people had an 80% plant-based diet. So that works for me. And that's why I choose now to only eat plant-based, whereas I still cook our traditional foods, and Quaden still loves his kangaroo and, you know, our traditional meats, our game meats. But decolonizing our diet, mind, body and soul, when we understand that everything's connected, I think that process of decolonizing is so important.
That's super interesting, because we talk a lot about gut bacteria and what are you colonizing your gut with?
Yes.
And maybe we just need a little bit more variety in the colonies that we are, like, you know, supporting down there. But it has to be said, I found really simple things. Like, for example, I love bread, and I'm gluten and dairy free. So for a long time, I would just buy bread. And if I buy a lot of store-bought bread, especially where it's been frozen or shipped, after a while, I actually lose a lot of energy in my work. My work requires a high level of energy and concentration. And I'll start doing things like getting on Seek and looking for a job.
Yes.
You feel like just 9 to 5.
What am I doing? Yeah.
And then what we've done is we've started supporting a lot of local bakers and stuff. Obviously, eventually we'd like to make our own bread, so we're working towards that. But, you know, we buy it from the person who made it, we get it out of the oven. And I've just found this phenomenal difference in my energy levels just from changing simple things like where my bread comes from. And I did have this idea one day, they talk about your daily bread and your income. And I was like, maybe the source does matter. Maybe the source of your money really does matter, and it really does affect your energy, because if you are funding things you don't believe in, you are literally scattering your chi force, you're scattering your aura. You're basically saying, I can't do any better, so I just won't do any better. So yeah, for me, simple things like buying this loaf of bread from this guy who makes it, he can tell me what's in it. To me, that's very empowering.
Of course.
It's a few dollars, but I always feel very like powerful after that interaction. Like I did that, you know, I didn't just like take the easy route.
Yes, I love that.
To his shop kind of thing. Just kidding. No, actually my husband drives to his shop, but you know, close enough.
I love a good sourdough.
Yeah, well, sounds like we need to make some bread together sometime.
Definitely.
Sounds awesome. Well, Yarraka, you've been so kind to do this interview, and I know it's going to make a lot of difference to the people who see it and who seek it out. So can you just spell out your website and your Facebook page and Instagram just so that it's really clear, and then I'll put that in the post as well.
Yeah, sure. So for people that are interested in following the journey that we're doing with advocating now since the video, Stand Tall for Dwarfism is the Facebook page that we created when Quaden was 3 years old, and we started sharing his journey, you know, just for people to get an idea and to educate people more. So Stand Tall for Dwarfism on Facebook. And then we've got the BlackCard. So we've got BlackCard Cultural Tours as well. Quaden's a tour guide and absolutely loves sharing his culture with the world. So that's just the blackcard.com.au, and you can find that on the web, on Facebook and Instagram. We've got the Black Card, which is our core business, workshops in cultural intelligence, cultural safety, and then we've got Black Card Cultural Tours, where we offer you know, much more interactive tours and food and a whole experience. So yeah, you can Google the Black Card and Black Card Cultural Tours. It's all on there, all across the social platforms. So feel free to connect if there's anyone interested. We're here, and you know, now is a great time to be able to connect. We respond to every email if there's any questions. So yeah, we're here.
You're a classic. Well, it's just been an honor to talk to you, Yarraka. I hope that we'll see each other again soon.
Definitely.
Let's sign off from this interview and just say thanks to everyone who's watching, and please support Yarraka and the industry that she stands for and the independence that she stands for. She's got beautiful energy, beautiful family. So I'm just going to sign off now. So 1111 peace signs to everyone.